Sorry about that. As if on cue, every 1 hour, 11 minutes, and 30 seconds, this thing dies on me. So congratulations. I don't know exactly what happened there, but anyway. Carrying on, picking up. I'm using the Dynamesh here, and I'm not quite sure what sort of challenges you're going to come into or run into dealing with this from a pre-topoed geo, but my biggest concern is going to be when to re-Dynamesh things, right? That's really what I want to think about, in addition to sort of the brushes and the direction that I'm sculpting things in, right? So you can use a lot of different brushes with this, but if you happen to be using the Dynamesh, you can really take advantage of it, because what this allows me to do is remesh the geo and get a different sort of result when smoothing, which I find to be really useful when you're trying to kind of create different shapes or certain shapes, right? So for example, right, this is all stretched out, so this is just a regular geo that I've just been pushing and pulling for the last little bit. All this stuff stretched out, and if I go back in and I smooth that out, the first thing that's going to happen is it's going to kind of return back to its original shape and then smooth past that shape, right? So it's going to default to sort of flowing back to where it's not stretched out, where the polygons are more even with the surrounding area. And if I Dynamesh this before I do that, then that's the new shape that it's going to kind of smooth around. So I find it really useful to kind of push the geo around a lot with the Dynamesh, get the shape that I want. Maybe I'll even play around with this arc so it kind of pulls outwards a little bit, something like that. Just want to make sure these folds and these creases sit on nice clean lines, right? They can kind of bend, right? Like they can sit on sort of these flat angles and taper and things like that, but they need to sit on consistent sort of shapes, right? They can't wobble in and out and do weird things like that. It's just not the way they go. So I'm just kind of using the move tool to kind of nudge these things around a little bit. And maybe I'll get that standard brush back. But anyway, as I was saying, the smooth brush is going to bring me back to that sort of original position. So I like to use that early when I'm kind of building out folds that I want to kind of return back to that original shape. But if I want to smooth the fold out itself, I'm going to remesh the geo with the Dynamesh, right? Get that topology evened back out, right? And then smooth the spacing back out. Right? It makes it easier to kind of establish that smoother shape that I'm going for. Now the downside to this is that you have to do it all in Dynamesh, so if you're looking to maintain a clean topology, you kind of have to expect a retopo pass later, or a Z-remeshing pass. If you're lucky, you can get that to do what you need it to do. So there are downsides. I'm not going to say this is a perfect workflow, but it works nicely for the way that I like to work anyway. And even just the brushes themselves you might find useful if you're trying to do a little bit of a cloth fold here and there, right? The only other thing that you might want to be concerned about from the standpoint of the bellows that you're looking at, the leather that you're looking at specifically, is the sharpness of the fold itself. And there's a few things that you can do to kind of do that sort of stuff, so, or to get more planes or more flatter lines to kind of create that sharper feel to the edges and things like that. But primarily I like to work with the polish brushes. I find they do a pretty nice job at this, and they do a couple of things that are pretty interesting too, right? I'm using the H polish brush, and when you use that H polish brush in an area and you hold the Alt key, it levels out the inside first, right? So it takes that deep surface and it pulls it out. This can be a bit of a problem over edges, so you do have to kind of be careful depending on how you're using it, but it works nicely to kind of level that shape out before a smooth. So if you're trying to recreate a sharper fold or a material that kind of produces a sharper angle like this, right? Kind of looking at the bellows, they've got these sort of really thin, sharp folds with these sort of flat lines to them, right? I might look at something along these lines to help create that, right? Now, granted, I'm working off of a sphere, so my base shape is making it a little difficult to make this anything but sort of a weird looking zigzag on a sphere. But hopefully that gives you a few ideas at least. Certainly don't feel like you have to take me as the only source. There's lots of great stuff out there on the internet for this sort of stuff as well. I think honestly, at the end of the day, the biggest thing that you're going to find consistent with my workflow and everyone else's is going to be reference. You know, make sure you got lots of really nice, good, clear reference of what you're trying to build, and your questions will be answered, right? That's always kind of the biggest challenge, is knowing, you know, what do you need where, and reference is really the easiest way to know that. You know, even as I'm doing my own designs on this character at the moment, I find it's, you know, the biggest challenge is the fact that I'm limited by, you know, what I can kind of find effective references for. And it's not, you know, it's not a problem. I enjoy the designing aspect of it as well, but for each element that I design, I also have to kind of have some reference for the different aspects of that too. So it's an interesting process, but one that I don't know where I was going with that. Anyway, just clean this surface up a little bit. Just kind of build out these plates a little. Oh, happy to help. I hope that gives you something to try out and experiment with at least. Looks like you got an interesting piece to do inside a Zbrush. That sort of cloth, those sort of pinched wrinkles and things like that are a good sort of start point for exploring some of the different tools there. In fact, I'm looking at your little reference image here that you sent, and kind of thinking to myself that I need to remember to do the, well, you know what, that's going to overlap, so that's going to go up here. Sorry. Mumbling to myself. That reminds me that I need to get some buttons on here, so I'm actually going to take these buttons all off of this surface and build something real quick. I've done a few buttons. I kind of like, when I do buttons, I like to archive them, so I like to build insert meshes for this sort of stuff. I think this is just kind of a fun exercise to get into. I'm building an archive, or I'm building a library of assets for down the road. It's just a neat way to do it. $50 for 33 assets. So that's a lot of assets, but if you're learning a lot, you know, now's the time to, you know, take advantage of not needing to pay exorbitant fees for things in your life, you know. That work experience will pay off in the long run, especially at 17. Dude, I wish I was doing stuff like that back in the day. Then again, I probably, you know, I was playing around with, you know, tools like Hash Animation Master and Strata Studio Pro. Having access to a tool set like Blender would have been amazing, but you know, back then I just should have applied for a job. It's like, oh, do you know how to open a computer up? Yeah, I teach. I'm an instructor. Do it full time. It's quite fun. Let's trim this in. Oh, that's what's going on here. Yeah, let's do this. Let's build a second layer in here just so that kind of makes more sense all of a sudden. It's a weird one, but you know, I think it'll work. Sudden change in design plans. This is what I like about just kind of making shit up as you go, though. You can just kind of do what you want. Not many 3D art courses. That's a shame. Yeah, I'm not super familiar with the education market over there for 3D. I know there's a good amount of European schools, but I haven't really heard of any in the UK. I'm sure to say that they exist. There's certainly an industry there, so I imagine there's going to be some educational institutes. But yeah, it's not a market that I know much about. Is it just sort of an age requirement, or I guess, you know, if they're looking for, you know, post-secondary experience or art degrees or something like that? I think this line goes through here, so that's that line. Yeah. That just goes away. I don't need that. It's just that. Okay, yeah. Let's just bring this in so this doesn't collide with that shape. There we go. Push this out and around a little bit more. And I think I want to give the cloth elements a bit of a pass. Oh, so like they're looking at high school grades and things like that? That's tough. I don't know if I would have gotten into a course like that. Most of the 3D education, at least the 3D educational institutes I'm familiar with, tend to utilize portfolios almost exclusively. I don't know if they'd get nearly as much business if they started looking at grade point averages and things like that. I wouldn't have gotten in. Well, that's a shame. I always find that a little frustrating, especially for an industry like this, where it's really not, you know, dependent on education in that way. You know, it's at the end of the day, whether you get hired by a studio or not, it's going to come down to what you know and how you can present what you know, and being able to provide, you know, either a demo reel or something like that that showcases your skill sets. Well, that's good. You know, at least as an instructor, my other recommendation, if you're looking for things to learn, would be art skills. Now, I think if you're spending a lot of time recreating, doing assets and things like that, you might be able to do without that sort of stuff, or at least you could learn it as you go. But if you're interested ever in getting into sort of characters or organic stuff, things like anatomy and art skills are really going to be valuable. You may have already come to the same conclusion, I'm not sure, but it would definitely be a general recommendation anyway. It's not always a requirement. You know, a good eye is something that you can build over time just doing 3D in general, but it can help get into these sorts of studios as well. But again, if they're not looking at portfolios and more so at grades, that's a tough one. Am I still doing this all symmetrically? Or am I doing this asymmetrically now? Oh, it looks like I'm still symmetrical right at the moment. Let's turn that off and start throwing some folds and wrinkles into this stuff. Oh yeah, I was gonna do something more useful than this, wasn't I? I was gonna build some buttons. What am I doing here? Okay. Doing some concepts in Photoshop. Jeez, you're going all over the place. Nice. Yeah. And some concept art. Yeah. That's good stuff. I like concepting things. I never got into doing a lot of drawing in Photoshop, but did a lot of 2D on paper. I enjoyed that. I always wanted to do some sort of digital drawing and stuff, but I always prefer to sit down and sculpt myself, so I never, any time that I have where I could be doing that, I end up doing this instead, I guess. But if you like to concept, you'll definitely enjoy doing some 3D modeling down the road too, I'm sure. Doing some character sculpting or creature sculpting, or if you're just even concepting out environments, right? Zbrush can be a fun place to do some of that sort of stuff too. Oh yeah, you definitely got to start somewhere, right? Don't you know? Don't forget, it's going to take time. It all takes time. I've never met anyone that just knows this stuff, right? Even some of the best students that I've had all had, you know, that they spent years drawing and things like that, or years doing their work at some level before coming to a school like VFS. And then, you know, that practice sits on top of the practice that they get, you know, in the school, and they build up quite a skill set, you know. I teach at the Vancouver Film School. The program I took is the program that I now teach in. It's actually it's a lot of fun. Got those buttons out of there. Maybe I can clean up the shape a little bit. And just polish this out. Oops. And then throw some little markers for where those buttons sit. Let's see. I actually shouldn't have gotten rid of them that quickly, but oh well. Let's just do a little something like that. Something up here. Split this while we're at it. Right, run the whole scene down a little bit. Maybe that'll just go like this. Maybe I'll just get rid of that shape here. Gone. Bye bye. Who needs you? Yeah. Canada, America, Australia. That sounds pretty good. You know, it's there's plenty of industry out in all those places, and some really good studios out there. No, I don't think this placement's working. Let's try here, here, here. And then we'll do these two here still. Kind of makes sort of sense. Hopefully that won't look weird, but once I put the buttons down, I'll know. So, so actually, as I was saying earlier, I think what I'm going to do here is use this as an opportunity to build out some insert meshes. So I'm going to be dropping in a couple of buttons over these areas, and I think I'm going to need to build them separately. So so I need a what tool should I start with? It's not gonna matter. I'm gonna Z-modeler this sucker. Ooh. Now let me think about this one actually. The cylinder might not be a bad choice if I'm gonna Z-model it. Let's do that. So I'm gonna make this primitive a polymesh. Now you might be wondering, why did I just grab a sphere if I'm going to be using a cylinder? That's because with ZModeler you're going to want to be, or at least, you know, unless you want these more as a base anyway, these primitives, I'm going to be utilizing the Q cylinder options here under the initialize menu, and you don't get access to these with primitives, so converting this over with Make Polymesh 3D, and then I'm going to use that to switch it over. So there's my cylinder. Maybe I'll do a y-axis cylinder so it's upright. Let's get the floor grids off. Let's turn those off. There we go. Ground plane. And I was thinking of doing some sort of military chest rig with insert multi-mesh. Yeah, you could do a lot of cool stuff like that with those pieces. So I'm going to take this and just kind of build this out into a button. Probably a simple little button of sorts. So let's see what my reference was saying with regards to that particular shape. It's just sort of a raised edge with an inset on the inside. So I could probably take this, use my transpose tools to just squash it down a little bit more. Actually, you know what? I might want to make this a little heavier. Let's take a look at the line flow on this. If I make it heavier, what do I get out of that? If I do 4 by 4 by 4, what do I get? Q cylinder Y. That might actually work out better, because I can use these points around the inner piece as holes. So that I'm going to use. That's what I'm going to do. And I'll take the Y-res down to 2 again, because I kind of like that. So this should give me, yeah, exactly that, right? It's kind of an odd one, but with the cylinders, at least, I find it works really well to use whichever axis that you're using to reduce the size. So if I'm doing an X cylinder or a Q cylinder X-axis, I'll keep this one lower, but you always want to keep the other two values up so that you get a proper cylindrical shape, right? So I'm just going to squish this down a little bit more, make it nice and thin here, and I wonder if there's a clever way to do this. Maybe I'll start by Q-meshing it. So let's grab the Z-modeler brush. Okay, Q-mesh, poly loop, and let's do this. Can I do that? No, that's not gonna work. So let's go into transform and crank up the radial symmetry. See what happens when we put this at 16. Not quite sure this will work the way I want, but I think it will. Okay, I'm going to turn the symmetry off first and just do this to get the depth first. So maybe I'll just do this way. I'm going to bring this out, just tap on that one and match it. Probably could have just polygroup the whole thing, but I think I just like that. I want to make sure this divides. It's not quite cylindrical, which kind of bugs me. This is sort of the downside to this Q cylinder, but I think it's going to be close enough. Let's get the wireframe off. It's got a little bit of a weird shape to it, but you know what? I think I'm going to use it just because it keeps all the points where I need them. And I'm going to try the bridge tool for this. So I'm going to see if I can do like an edge bridge, or yeah, just a bridge across these two polygons. So let's see, if I do bridge, nope, not edge actions, face actions, bridge, connected polys. Can I do circle? Will that work? I'm not sure. It kind of works, but it's not doing it quite the way I want it to. Not quite at all. So, what other clever alternative do I have here? So the radial symmetry is no good for this. The target is no good for that. Spherize won't work. There are other ways to do this. I just really wanted to do this with Zmodeler, but what's this gonna work? What will this do? A little torn. I can think of an easy way to do this with just dynameshing it and freaking booliening the crap out of this and merging some pieces together. But I'm always trying to find interesting ways, or some way to use the Zmodeler here, and I'm probably just approaching this the wrong way, so you know what? I'm going to do this the other way. Let's do the ring instead. Not what I wanted to do, but I think I can do this easier. How do I close the hole, though? Ooh, that's a problem. It's an annoying series of problems. I could bridge those pieces. That might work. How many edges do I have going around this thing? What, 3, 6, 12, 16. So if I can get the ring to go around, let's do a little bit smaller on that. Full coverage. Let's do it so we get 2 edges at least on the inside. We got 10. That might work. And let's bring this down to 17. 16? Is it gonna be 16? Looks like it's gonna be 16. It's a different way to work, right? So there's a few different ways that I could approach this. I'm struggling mostly because I'm trying to find a way to incorporate a workflow into this using the tools that I have available, right? So what I'm trying to get is a rounded piece around the outside. I could kind of go in through a piece like this and just kind of bridge it all up in the middle, but I'd have to really, bridging and closing those holes can be a little bit difficult in Zbrush, so I'm trying to avoid that. Another technique I could use would be to just boolean or merge 2 pieces of geo together and then just mesh them with Dynamesh, which kind of gives me that same sort of volume structure that I was working with on the body, but the line flow on that and the topology of it's going to be a little bit more annoying to work with. I'd rather have something with line flow, so just for the sake of, because it's such a small little item, right? That way I don't need to retopo it later. I could try doing it with Z-Remesher, which would kind of give me a rough retopo, but that still tends to be fairly heavy. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to append these 2 pieces together, these 2 objects that I just built. And I'll take this one and scale this down so it fits near the other one. So I'm just using the Z modeler brush here right at the moment, but I need a regular brush so I can get into my scale tool. Right, this transpose tool is a little tricky to work with if you're not used to it as well. So I'm going to kind of leave just a bit of a gap here, and I just want to get this radius up to the size that I want. So maybe I'll scale it out a little bit more and use the deformation inflate to expand that out a little bit. Then, how's that thickness looking? That's about right. Let's turn transparency on and see how well these two objects fit together. So I could probably give this a little bit more height. Let's use the move tool. I just want to bring that up to the level of the rest of those pieces. Alright, so now I've got these loops on the outside lined up with the inside loops here. I should be able to merge these two objects together. Merge down. Okay. Go into the Z modeler tool and delete the faces. So let's grab my Z modeler brush. Do a delete loops tool. I'll isolate this poly group down with Control-Shift-Tap, right? So these are all different colors. Zbrush is sort of keeping track of these poly groups semi-dynamically as I work. So Control-Shift-Tap on that color allows me to isolate that down. I'm going to hold the spacebar down with my Z modeler brush active. So hold the spacebar, get access to my polygon actions, and find the delete, and set that to poly loop, and then just make sure that that line is going in the direction I want to delete in, right? So, you know, yeah, it definitely sounds confusing, but once you get used to it, you kind of find where things are, and it's not so bad. And then I can unhide that, and I'll just delete these loops as well. So now I've got two holes to seal up. And there's a tool that I saw the other day that I've been eager to play with and try out here, which is the bridge polygon tool. And this is actually a regular brush, so I'm going to need to find it. I don't think I have this anywhere in my UI. So the curve bridge. And this actually requires curves, I believe. So I think what I need to do is grab a brush that's going to let me draw curves out on these edges. What I might just do is do a stroke curve functions and frame the border, right? So that's going to put these little curves on here. And then I should be able to use this. It's not quite bridging the way I want it to, so I got to get rid of these other curves. Let's use the topology brush for this. I'll just see if I can get rid of those two. So what I'm doing is I'm basically using the topology brush to drop in the curves, or to remove the curves with Alt click and drag. So when you've got that brush active, you just draw another line through something and it removes the curves that it touches. So now I can go back to that bridge tool. Where did I have that? That was here, curve bridge. And it'll bridge that up. That did not give me clean line flow though. For something so simple, I wouldn't have expected that to be as difficult as it was. So maybe I'll do... Considering how that turned out, let's try something different. Stroke, delete, right? Like I said, I don't do a lot of this hard surface stuff in ZBrush, so I'm kind of exploring with this sort of approach. I hope it's not too weird, but giving you an idea of what not to do at least, right? So the curve bridge might be more useful in situations where I'm not trying to line up exact topo, which is often, mind you, right? This isn't something that I wouldn't want to use. It's just something that's not going to really be nice in this case. Can I help you with importing? Yeah, I might be able to. What sort of issue are you running into? I'll keep trying to find this brush in the meantime. Let's take the Z modeler and do a edge action. There's a stitch, right? Do I want a stitch hole? Is that really what I'm looking to do? Oh, that didn't really work. Okay, I see what they're doing. Maybe I'll just weld points. You know what? At the end of the day, right? 2 points, 2 end point. That'll work. Right, we'll just do this. Done. Done, 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 done. Done, done, done. Alright. Takes a while, but it'll get there. Wow, I'm good at making ZBrush look appealing for modeling, right? Yeah. Let's just weld points one at a time. I know I'm probably missing some stupid easy option for this too. I was really hoping I could just build an arc around the radius, but that didn't really seem to want to work off with this primitive. At the moment I have to place and scale them individually, which makes it next to impossible to make the same. So I have 2 meshes in Blender. So the issue is that you're trying to get them both into the same tool. It sounds like you might just need to import them into the same subtool instead of outside. Are they 2 separate OBJs that you're working with at the moment? Because one technique would be to keep them separate objects in 3D Studio Max, but export them as a single OBJ. So select both of them at the same time, and then export them out, right? And export them as a single OBJ. And ZBrush will polygroup them as separate objects, like mine is currently, like this object that I've got in front of me. So you'll see these different colors representing each different object inside of ZBrush. Another example, this might be... Do I have anything in here that's built out of pieces? No, I don't actually. I don't have a good example for you, but... basically, yeah, have them all selected, and then export it all into a single OBJ, and then when you bring it back into ZBrush, use the group split, cancel it. Actually, I can do it, it's okay. It says it's not undoable, but I can undo it on the first subtool, and that splits them all back into separate subtools back in ZBrush again, right? So now I've got sort of this inner strip, this piece, and this piece all separate, right? So that would be one technique that might work. Because then you can split them back out. The other option, where's the tool with the history? Did it actually remove the history on it? Uh-oh. Well, now I feel like an idiot. Let me merge these back together. Merge down. Merge down. There we go. Let's weld all these points back together here. Modify topology, weld points. Let's make sure they're welded. Let's find my smooth brush. Yeah, that's welded. Cool. Yeah, that's welded. Alright. The other option that you might have, and this is a little bit different, but this is kind of the way to bring in additional objects as well, is you have to load them all into the same subtool to have them match up in size. And the easiest way to do that is to append a blank subtool, like a primitive, right? So I might take this button object, append a cube 3D into the same scene, so now I've got a cube in here, right? And from here, I can select the cube and go import, right? So you take your first subtool, you take your first object, you load that up, and then you add another placeholder subtool, and then you import in your next object. So I've got a merged gun object that's built in pieces, right? And I add that in, and now I've got both pieces here, right? And they're both at the scale that they should have been coming out of 3D Studio Max. So that's another way to do it, right? I don't need this, so I'm just going to delete that. But that would be the way I would do it if I've already got a few things inside of ZBrush, or maybe I've already done some work on it, or maybe some pieces are finished or the others aren't. And all you need to do is, again, just append on a placeholder object, right? Something to replace, right? Just pick an object like a sphere or a cube. I don't recommend the Z-sphere. That doesn't really work as nicely, I think. But you know, even any of these little primitives, and then just import over top of it with it selected. so now I've got this. I'm going to use a little creasing, actually, and put some holes in this geo. So I think what I need to do is, do I have Z-axis symmetry here? I should. Let's see. Let's grab the move brush and turn on Z. I want Y-axis symmetry, don't I? Transform? No, yeah, transform, activate symmetry. Let's turn the radial count off and make sure that this works. Yeah, that's working. Yeah, cool. Try it at this point just to make sure. Yeah, alright, so that seems to be working. So I can use that to make sure I get a consistent hole. So when I do the Z modeler, hover over the point and go split, point, I'll crease it, that sounds good. Yeah. And then I can just draw that out to the size I want. Oh, I ran into this problem last time. We'll see how it turns out. This might be an issue. I might need to move it out a section to get a cleaner result. But that gives me those holes. Let's push them through with the Q mesher. So I'll go Q mesh, polygroup all. No, yeah, polygroup all. Just push that through. And then let's see, does that subdivide round? Yeah, it's not great. I'm not a huge fan of how that turned out, but let's turn the... You know, you probably won't notice it. Probably wouldn't notice it, but what I might do is try to throw a... Let's see if there's something I can do to get this a little bit better. That doesn't split any better. It would have to be these four, so that might be... This might be my best option, is to do these or these. This'll... Maybe this one will work better. It's a little bit of a less of a weird shape to be dropping these into. Right, so with this, what I'm doing is I'm drawing it out. It's not great, but I think I'll be okay with that. It's kind of better than this one, I think. Yeah. So let's just drop that back in. And basically I'm drawing one out to the size that I want, and then tapping on the points to repeat the action, right? So that's just sort of the way that the tool works. And then we'll just push that through. Let's see, that looks a little better. I like that. I think that'll work. It'll work well enough anyway. So now I just need to crease these edges to hold the sharpness here. Let's go edge action, crease, edge loop complete, and I'll just crease that loop there and there. And that should be enough to get that to divide up quite nicely. So now it's done. Button. Cool. I like it. That'll work. It's a little wonky in the middle, and I could nudge the edge around and see if I can find a better spot for it. So I could try doing a little tweaking to these edge positions, but I'm not sure it's worth the effort, just to make sure that it doesn't fall apart on me there. So I'm going to just take this and convert this over to a brush, right? I think this is ready for me to work with anyway. No, you know what? I'm going to add the stitching, because why not build both pieces at the same time? So I'll append the Z-sphere on. I like using Z-spheres for this sort of stuff. I think it works pretty well. So grab my move brush, the space bar in here, scale this Z-sphere down. If you haven't used Z-spheres before, you're missing out. It's a nice tool. Nice, nice. Glad that worked out for you. Very cool. Yeah, I'm glad that one worked out. Usually, sometimes the group splitting works, but sometimes it can cause more problems than it fixes. So yeah, I'm glad the other option worked for you. Let's stick this. I don't want this to look. Let's just do 2 cross stitches. Keep it simple. So I'll take this and put this down here. Go into draw mode with Q. Do I have any symmetry here? Yeah, that works. Let's just do that. W. Translate that. Okay. Throw another one in. Put that down there. Scale these things up a little bit. Got that dynamic solo mode on. Sometimes that really bugs me. I think that'll work. I think I put it on the bottom, but it's okay. So let's take that and convert that over to Geo. I'll use the, not the rigging menu, the adaptive skin. Preview that. That gives me some Geo to look at. Make adaptive skin. And of course I'll have to append that Geo back in because Z-spheres aren't actually geometry, so gotta convert that over. And you know what? As much as I like it, the topo on this never quite satisfies me, so I think I want to slice it. I'm going to delete the bottom half, and I might do that with the edge loops don't quite work if I delete loops, unfortunately. What would be easiest? I could slice it. That might just be the easiest way to do it. So I'm going to grab the slice tool. Let's re-polygroup the whole object with Control W. Grab my slice curve. Okay. And I'll just do this. And let's make sure we've got no subdivision levels on this object. Geometry. Delete lower. And do I have any symmetry here? Let's just make sure. Okay, I'm doing it the right way. Is that gonna work? You know what? I don't see a reason to keep this so sharp. Just do that. And then I'll take that and mirror and weld it. So I get it nice and symmetrical. Take the top half. Let's do this with the select rectangle. Why isn't that working? Am I in? Oh yeah, I'm in the weird tool. There we go. Delete hidden. Make sure that that's not in the mesh. That is, but maybe I can Z-remesh it out. Let's see if the Z-remesher just gets rid of it. So I'm just gonna Z-remesh this sucker. Where is it? No, it's under geometry. Where am I going? Geometry. Z-remesher. Z-remesher. There it is. Bring this down to 100. Let's get that adaptive size down so I don't have those extra polys there. Yeah, that's good. I'm just going to hit it a few times just to smooth the shape out a little bit more. And there we go. A little stitch. Let's bring this into place a little bit better. Move. Drop it down. Bring it up a bit. And let's do maybe a rotate on this thing and duplicate this while we're at it. So I'll grab my rotate. I'm going to hit Control and Shift. Nope, I don't think that's going to do it. Let's do Subtool Duplicate. Rotate. Grab our Move tool. Translate that. And bring this up a little bit. There we go, two overlapping shapes. I can kind of use the move tool to bend this a little bit, so I'll just hold the Alt key. Is my symmetry going to work here? Oh, my symmetry isn't going to work. I need a different symmetry, don't I? I need a Z-axis symmetry. Let's do Z instead of X. Bend that down a little bit more. So I'm just holding Alt while using the move tool to do that sort of bending effect. And I'll just turn that back off and translate that back a little bit like that. So there we go. Little stitch. Probably still a bit on the heavy side, but I think this will work just fine. So I'm going to merge this all into one piece, minus the Z-sphere. Let's bring this down, merge down. Always merge down. Alright. And I'm actually going to auto-group this as well. Polygroups, auto-groups. Just so that they're isolated into separate polygroups per piece of geo in case I need that for later. And I might end up redrawing this, but I'll try to you know, I can always kind of go back to this tool and tweak this later, so and redraw them back out. But for now, I'll turn this into a brush, create insert mesh, right? There's only one object, so I don't need to use the insert multi-mesh. Create a new brush, and now I can go back to my jacket, or my vest. Right, and I made sure that my camera was facing the right direction for this, and then I can just draw that out. And there's my symmetry on, let's turn that off. Just draw that out. Now, one thing that I find is going to be really useful for me here is to lock in a draw size with that dynamic draw mode on. So what I want to do is, see, that's ridiculous. Let's bring that down. So what I want to be able to do is drag this out and hold control and snap that to a specific size, right? That way I can draw that out to the same size every time based on my draw size. So I'm going to bring this down maybe a little bit more. Draw that out, hold control. That's too small. A little bit bigger. 70. I like that. That'll be good. Right, so again, control. Turn my symmetry on. Draw this one out. Control. Turn my symmetry back off. Draw this one out. Control. Drag this one out. Hold control. And now I've got my buttons laid out. Right. And I can split these off pretty quickly in this process too. There's no need to keep this part of the original mesh, so I'm just going to grab each of these with my select rectangle. Right. Split hidden. Yeah, let's split hidden, get the vest separated out as its own piece. Now I've got the buttons and the vest separate, and I can tweak either of those as I need to. So hopefully that'll give me a little bit of flexibility laying that stuff out, and I can kind of go from here. That said, I think I'm going to just keep kind of refining down a little bit of this area around this stuff now that I've got a little bit more of an idea of where these wrinkles are. Yeah, subtools are great, right? Subtools really change the workflow a lot too, right? So if this is your first time kind of experimenting with that, have fun. It's definitely a big part of working effectively with ZBrush, right? And you can quickly merge and unmerge those objects and do all sorts of neat stuff with them once you get used to it. It's part of the booliening tool set, so if you're interested in any of the hard surface stuff in ZBrush, you're definitely going to want to get comfortable with subtools for sure, right? They'll do nothing but make your experience better in the long run for that sort of stuff too. Kind of imply a little bit of a detail underneath this as well. Maybe average this height back out a little bit. Start doing yeah. Yeah, it's definitely going to be an easier place to tackle those sorts of challenges. I like ZBrush for sort of the designy aspects of it though a lot, right? It's really hard to do stuff like this. Oh shit, did I just... can I mirror that over? Let's see if I can do this. Let's do it this way. Let's do this. Oops. I messed up my symmetry here, so I think if I do... Normally the Smart Resim doesn't work so well. I'm going to give this a quick save before I do something crazy like this. The Smart Resim tools are meant to work on top of it's symmetrical, so I tend not to do a great job on this Dynamesh geo, but I want to see if I can copy over that change that I made from that other side. You know what, that might have been okay. Oh, now you see all those weird little spots? I'm not convinced that were those comes back up. Oh, the Dynamesh sealed itself back up. I like that. Alright, that worked. Alright, cool. So a little bit of that. Just keep kind of layering in everywhere, I think. Where's that standard brush? Maybe use a little gravity, right? I mentioned this earlier when I was dealing with the cloth, but I do use this a fair bit. Nice to have a little gravity on your brush. This one's located under the brush menu if you're digging around. The depth settings, right? This just drags the brush stroke or the area around the brush stroke down a little bit, so it's a nice one for getting a little bit overlap in your folds. Do a lot of that through here. Just tuck that in a bit. Carve this in a bit here. Maybe bring this area out. Yeah. 10 times. There we go. Alright. I wanted to experiment with this not being a hat here. I kind of threw the hat in early on in the design process, and the more I look at it, the more I want to get going and see how this all works without it. Let me see how this jacket looks. That's not bad. I might be able to. I think I'm going to end up doing that instead. Is it that time? Starting to notice a few hiccups on the stream here. Might be at that hour and 11 minutes and 30 seconds here. It might be coming up, so just a heads up for those viewing. The stream dies at around the hour and 11 minute mark from streaming. I don't know why, but it seems share just doesn't like to share for longer than that for me. Maybe hop onto Reddit one of these days and see if I can find a little bit more information on that problem, but till then, still not sure. Hey, turn. Yeah, getting techie. I'm starting to kind of layer in some of these panels. I just decided that the way that the holster was mounted could be kind of part of the vest itself. So since I'm layering all the armor in anyway, I might as well in some sort of attachment structure for it, and I kind of got carried away. But it's working out so far. Maybe there's sort of buttons or something like that through here, some sort of mechanism that, or maybe like I don't know, some sort of magnetic rail mount type thing for some sort of pouch attachment components or something. Something that would sit on there. Maybe it's like maybe it's got some variation to the shapes. Sort of runs through here. I don't know exactly what that's supposed to be, but it's scribbles on the side. Men scribbles. Perfect. Design done. So easy. You just make shit up. That easy. Alright. Let's see, what else can we do here? I think I want to kind of split these and get a little bit more little wrinkles coming off of some of this stuff. It's still... I still kind of imagine a certain element of this being clothier. Maybe this stuff in here is sort of a clothy. Whoop, no, not that piece though. And then the wrinkles folding off some of the layered elements a little bit. that? Still stuttering a little bit on the feed there, I see. Let's see if might need a quick restart here. Am I doing a wrinkle through here? There's a plate there that partially covered anyway. I'll add a few edge wrinkles here. Just to kind of taking you to get to it. Yeah, some stuff is going to be real easy in Zbrush. It's kind of the magic behind it. It does some things really, really fast. Overdo that too much, but I do want a little bit more in there. It's bigger stuff. I don't want these folds to get too small on the big stuff because it's sort of a heavier. This stuff, on the other hand, I want to get sort of a distinct difference in. Looks like the stream is freaking out more than enough for me to warrant restarting this thing, so I'm gonna reboot the stream real quick here. Give me a few moments while I get in and out of the share mode here.